Today we're going to be talking about forms of decimals, and it actually is going to connect to our lesson yesterday when we were talking about modeling decimals, because we have to understand the value of what the decimal is worth when we're writing it out in different forms, okay? So the forms that we're talking about are the same ones that we had talked about with regular numbers. You have standard form, you have written form, and you have expanded form. Expanded form is the form that's going to connect most closely to kind of what we did yesterday. All right, so let's just for fun write a number. We're going to write the number, I drew a number here. So let's check this number out. I drew it on the hundreds grid. I know there's 100 squares in a hundredths grid, so it's 1 cut into 100. And I've colored in 98 of the squares. So I've colored in 98 hundredths, okay? So I'm going to come over here, and if I'm going to write 98 hundredths, my number has to end in the hundredths place because that's how I would read it. So I would do this, 98 hundredths. There's no ones. I have nothing over here. So a lot of times you'll see them put a 0 before the decimal. Okay? So 98 hundredths. When you read a decimal, you say the name of the place that it ends in. So this one ends in the hundredths place. So if I were to write this out in my different forms, my standard form is literally just writing it using the digits. So I would transfer it from my place value chart down here. So I have 98 hundredths. I could also write it without the 0 in front of it, and it would still mean the same thing because this is the 0 in the ones place, and this has nothing in the ones place. So either way would be acceptable, okay? Now my written form is where I'd write it out in words. When we did written form with regular numbers, I told you we didn't use the word and. Because when you use the word and, it means you have a decimal. Well, now we have a decimal, so now we can use the word and. So this decimal is and when you are writing a number. So, but you only use it if you have something over here. So for 98 hundredths, I wouldn't use the word and, okay? However, let's change this a little bit. Let's make it 1 and 98 hundredths, which means I have to turn this into a 1, okay? And then that would have a 1, so that would be the same thing. So there's really only one way to write it now. So you have, the way you would say this, would you say 1 and 98 hundredths? So you read the decimal as an and. So you would write it as 1 and 98 hundredths. I don't know if you can see that. It might be off of the, okay? And remember the THS. You need that to show that it's less than 1, hundredths, okay? So this is important because the and is the decimal. So this is the only time you're going to use the word and when you're writing in written form, all right? Last but not least, we're going to come over here to our expanded form. The expanded form is when you write the value of each number, okay? So there's a couple ways that we can write it. We have kind of the basic way, and then we have the 5th grade way. So we're going to focus a lot on the 5th grade way this year. So you have 1. So the 1 is worth 1 plus 9/10. Now there's something really important. The 9 is in the 10ths place, and the 10ths place is one place after the decimal. So you have to include the decimal plus 9/10. You might see people write it as, a lot of times in your math books, you're going to see it written as this. 9/10 plus 8. The 8 is in the hundredths place. So I have to, in order to do that, I can't put the 8 here because that's the 10ths place is right after the decimal. So I have to remember to use a placeholder, okay? The 8 comes 2 places after the decimal, so I would need to write it like this. So that would 1 plus 9/10 plus 8 hundredths. Okay, that would be the number. And if you look at it here, you have, this part is the 98 hundredths. 98 hundredths is made of 98 hundredths is made of 9/10 because you have 9 full rows colored in, and then you have 8 hundredths. It doesn't make a full row, there's only 8 of them colored in. So remember that 10 hundredths is the same as a 10th. You can see it right next to it. So that's why that 98 hundredths can be broken down into 9/10 and 8 hundredths. Okay? Now, as far as the 5th grade way of doing it, you have 1, 1. You have 9 tenths, 9 times 10th, 1/10, plus you have 8 hundredths, 8 times 100th, okay? So this is kind of like the 5th grade way of doing it. How many ones do you have? 1. How many tenths do you have? 9. How many hundredths do you have? 8, okay? Because remember, each of these is a fraction. A tenth, a hundredth, and this one over here would be a thousandth, okay? So if you were writing your expanded form and you were writing the value of each number, you could write out the value this way, or you write out this way. I have 1, 1, I have 9 tenths, and I have 8 hundredths, okay? And this would be this, and then when you add it all together again, you get that. All right, let's try another number. Let's try something like 5. Let's do something I've drawn here. Let's make our decimal in the blue. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full rows of thousands colored in. Remember from yesterday, there's 100 thousands in each row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, which is 60 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 5 little lines colored in, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 rows colored in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 squares colored in, and 5 little lines colored in. So this decimal would be 665 thousandths, the blue one, okay? So I have 5 and 665 thousandths. So standard form, again, I'm just going to write 5 decimal 665, and I would say it 5 and 665 thousandths because it ends in the thousandths place. And I would write it the way I would say it. So I'd write it 5 and, remember and is the decimal, 665, and I'm going to have to continue it down here so you guys can see it, thousandths. All right? Now my expanded form. We're going to do the expanded form we're going to go right into doing it the 5th grade way, okay? So I have how many ones? I have 5 ones, so I'm going to write it like that. Plus, how many tenths? Well, each row, each full row of boxes in the thousandths grid is 100 thousandths, which is the same thing as a tenth. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those rows colored in, so it's the same thing as having 6 tenths colored in. So I have 6 tenths, okay, plus I have 6 hundredths. I have 6 of those squares colored in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay. So 6 times 100th, it's a fraction, plus 5 thousandths. So I have, and this square is not full, there's only 5 of those tiny little lines colored in. So 5 times 1,000th. Not 1,000. 5,000 would be way over here. This is a tenth, not 10. 10 is over here. This is a tenth. Okay? So this is 1. This is 10. All right? So that's how that works. And we'll go over it some more together in class.